So, in InDesign, you'll have to reconfigure the size of the image, also the size of the frame. So, you can alter that for whatever reason you might need. But you can create that board, those new pages, any way you want. And I will kind of randomly create a bunch of pages and then just kind of copy the images onto those pages first. And then I'll start to kind of think about how I'm going to present it to kind of do it, a little bit easier. A little bit more toward the idea. But what I want to do is get as many images as a kind of just thrown on there. Don't worry about trying to get the right picture on the first go round. Just get the images based on the kind of horizontal format based on 10 slides or so. And then you can start to see if you delete some images, move them to other pages, that kind of thing. That can happen. One thing I want to talk to you about, do you see in the board, I've got text that I've got on the, in InDesign, I've also got that text on the native Illustrator file. So one thing you want to do, if I go to links and I do relink and I show import options, and I'm looking for Lubbock site plan .ai. Show import options. Okay, that's it. I choose open, and I can go to layers and click off text. So then the text goes away on the referenced image. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure that you have the layers in Illustrator so that those files, even in the InDesign file for various forms, whether it's a big board or for a smaller book, you can turn off that text and make a new text box in InDesign for that particular layout. And you'll have to do that because, when you have a presentation on a big board, you have floor plan, 1/8 inch scale, but when you're presenting it digitally, it's not 1/8 inch, so you can't just, you don't want that giant text saying 1/8 inch equals 1 foot 0 if it's not true, right? Also, the size of it is usually kind of off for that kind of presentation. So I could go through this for about 45 minutes, but I'm going to show you instead the page that I went ahead and made this morning. So I made let me go to the pages. I made a series of pages. I first started with this. So if this was my intro, I would say, here's the title. And then I have a little bit of text. If you want text, that's okay. You don't have to. But the text has to be kind of remade for this particular view. And so when I am starting, I list what this is about. So this is kind of scales of the project. So whether it's regional or the block, this sets up my argument. And then I decided I did another one. I kind of like this one as a cover first. So this is another intro, and then I would have this next without that. And then I go into, pretty slow. Then here I have this idea of population growth and water that's kind of dropped off, showing what's existing in terms of an artificial pipe network, underground water network. And so my idea here was to say make playas, not pipes. Then I get into the phases, then a 2D and 3D plan, then begin to get into detail. And I'm showing the low resolution version of this. Render, and here I don't show an image with 12 different renders. You want to maximize any particular views you have. So, you know, you can, for your studio presentation, you can have as many PDF pages as possible. I would highly recommend, so that when you scroll through it, you really see the presentation. I mean, that you see the image, not a tiny version. If you spend a lot of time on a render, you want to make sure that you see the particular image and you can talk about it. Here I have like a 3D version. Again, this text is remade. It's not from the original drawing. And then when you end the presentation, you want to end up with, again, one of the better images of the project, whether that's a kind of detail. It doesn't have to be detail. It can kind of go back and reinforce the original idea. Here there's a kind of miniature water collection in between the duplexes, and then you can see the playa out beyond. And so it's always good to kind of end with one of your best images for your project. Then when you make a PDF of this, these referenced images, you can see the drawings are vector-based. Those are either Illustrator or PDF files. When I make, if I'm going to go to, did y'all lose me?
No, we're listening.
No, we can see you.
Okay. Are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I made two different things. Let me start with this. What you need to do for your presentation is, this is how I want the presentation. This is all the native files that are referenced. But what I want to do for a presentation, all of my drawings are made like 36 inches wide, and a giant Illustrator file. You guys might have I've seen them like 300 megabyte Illustrator file that has multiple pieces to it, right? If you reference that Illustrator file, it creates a huge memory load on the InDesign file and on the eventual PDF. So if you're presenting, if you're presenting for the screen, or you're presenting 8.5 by 11 or smaller, you don't need that gigantic file, and it causes a huge memory problem for both for the finished PDF. And so what I'll do is I'll click on I'll go to my links, and I'll go through the links that I have, and let's say I go to this one, and it's got my Lubbock map with chart Illustrator, and I will edit in Photoshop. And what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to change the image size, which is the width of 20 inches by 15. I just know that if it's 20 inches wide, I can probably make it less than 300 DPI a little bit and still have a resolution that's pretty okay. But you can change this by, if I change this to 150 DPI, you can see the image size is even smaller, right? And so then you'll hit OK. And the reason I don't change the image size is because the referenced image that was an Illustrator file, when I relink it, if I don't change the size of it in terms of inches, and if I go, when I relink it, it'll keep the same size and everything will be fine. But if I do File and then Save As, and save as a JPEG, and I'm just going to do maximum for that. And then I'm just going to close this. I don't need to save the Illustrator file. And then I go back to InDesign, and I again click on the file I want to replace, and I right click over here on the link, and I do relink, and I'll change that to Lubbock site plan map with chart. Lubbock, where'd it go? Map with chart 3 is what I made. I hit open, and then it relinks it to the same place because I didn't change the image size or location within that. And that looks really blurry. View, display mode, high quality. But you can see when I make a PDF, that image is going to read as an image. And so this will significantly reduce the PDF in the end. Does that make sense? So just to show you, I went ahead and I'm going to not save that one. And I'm going to open the one that I made from that second one. So I went ahead, and you can see in the links, I duplicated Playa 1, and I made Playa 2, if that makes sense. And with those, I changed every Illustrator file or InDesign file, or sorry, Illustrator or PDF file referenced to be a JPEG. So this 3D image is now a JPEG. Go to the link. This memo from the city of Lubbock is now a JPEG. The map that I had is now a JPEG. So all of that. And what I'll do now is, you do, when I'm done, Control E and make the PDF. Everybody know how to do that? So just to show you what happened when I go to U of A, when I go to my folder in Lubbock, I had the Playa 1. So this file was made with my first book presentation. So this one has the PDFs and the Illustrator files shown. And while it looks good, you can see that it takes a long time for me to go to full screen. It takes a little bit of time to scroll through see the little time thing? It takes a while to scroll through the PDF because it's trying to manage the size of the individual files. It takes a little bit, there's a little bit of lag. So that can cause problems if you get frustrated and double click and zoom past pages. The other thing is, if you look at the file size down here, it's 34.7 megs. So if I ask for all the students to upload their presentation for like graduation, and I have one person's that's 34 megs, and this is with the pretty small file size. Y'all's presentations are usually larger. Multiply that times 90, and this is a huge folder that you're making everyone look through. The other thing is, if you're making this for a portfolio and someone asks, hey, send me your portfolio, and you have to send them a link that they have to download, you're not going to get the job. Somebody else that sent like a 2 megabyte PDF that they can open and scroll through fast is going to get a job before you, even if their work is worse than yours. It doesn't matter. That kind of thing is a big deal. So if what I did was make this other Playa, I made this PDF from the second folder, from the second InDesign file that was made with reference JPEGs. And can you see that this file is 13 megabytes to begin with? So instead of 34 megs, it's 13. Now, if I take that Playa 2 and I reduce that file size, it goes down to 7 megs. So then, and this is without any loss of screen resolution because they're JPEGs and it's not reduced down the second time. If I reduce it down a second time, I could get this down to 2 megs, but it would start to look kind of that blurry JPEG on the screen look. But so this just tells you, you know, you can easily email one of these, and you can imagine that times 3 or times 10 for studio or times 100 for graduating work. This saves people a lot of time in downloading. Does that make sense? And I'll just show one other option that I did more with PDFs. I took a former student's so can y'all see that? This is one of my students' projects from Miami. And so this is a horizontal board, so it's okay. But if you were to present this, it's hard to read everything. Does that make sense? Are you guys looking at that board?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what I would recommend, instead of having one board and then the next board, is that you, again, reorganize this to be multiple pages. This worked for him because he could just plot out 2 boards, and I think this was, you know, like 3 feet by 6 feet. That you can print it like that, but it's difficult to get the idea across with everything at once. And so instead, and he's lucky, the file that PDF is only 10 megabytes and the other final board is 7 megabytes. Again, that's pretty, he did a good job reducing that PDF down pretty low without losing any resolution. I just took his file and I did this like at 11 a.m. today. So I made a series of pages with the same pieces. When you make I forgot to say, when you make the pages, you'll want to toggle between screen mode normal in the preview so you can see the edges of the frame, but in the page. But keep in mind that you're not going to see that when you view it, so that's a problem. Let me get into another little trick. So all I did was reference his final board, and that final board has multiple pages on it, or multiple drawings. You can see that if I just want to look at the perspective, I have parts of another drawing on here, right? So when you see that's one reason why you want to kind of get drawings away from each other, not have them kind of collage over each other, because you're going to end up presenting this in multiple ways later on, and that might be a problem. In this case, it's an easy fix for me. I can just draw a rectangle over it. I can make that rectangle white, and then it's gone. But I could see cases where that's a little bit harder to do. So keep in mind that when you present your work, that you'll want different files for different drawings that you can reference in either big boards or book or screen formats later. So I did the same thing. I referenced all the pieces, and then I duplicated the InDesign file. I made a Miami 2 folder that is, instead of PDFs, it's all JPEGs. So let me just, I'm going to skip to that and show you the first PDF I made is 26 megabytes. And when you present, instead of scrolling through, it's always best to do the full screen. So you can see the line weights on here pretty nicely. That works, but it takes a little bit of time to kind of go through each page. The plan works. I did an option where, in this case, I decided I want to do a plan with the perspective. So sometimes it's best to, maybe you want to just look at the plan and show that plan in detail. That's okay. You can, and don't be afraid of empty space either, that's fine. But you could combine the plan with another drawing so that you kind of bounce back and forth. So if I'm looking at the plan, I'm going, gosh, what are all these weird lines going through the site? You can then immediately look at the perspective and see that those are kind of old rail lines that become kind of planted with other pieces, or kind of subtracted for pedestrian pathways. Again, so here I might have a section with a perspective. Again, it's okay to have an empty space. There's nothing wrong with that. And so that's all I have for that. So, you know, I just made that in like 30 minutes. Again, that PDF is 26 megs. I made a second one that's from linked JPEGs. So this Miami 2 PDF is made from Miami 2 InDesign that links JPEGs, not PDFs. Does that make sense? And so all of these files are JPEGs. The site plan, you can see the lines better in this, the lines that were planned. I recognize that this site plan was literally 8 feet long, and so it just does not work in this type of presentation. You cannot see the text. But these are all JPEGs. Again, you can see the little oops, the mistake up here, but you would cover that up and fix that. But now this, and you can see that there's really no loss in the line weights or the tones or the line quality here for this drawing. You can see everything as if it was a vector drawing, but it scrolls through super fast. The plans read fine, or there in the perspective and the section. So it's the scroll through is instantaneous. The file size itself is 9.8 megs. That's without me downsizing. If I downsize that, it turns into 2 megs. And I'll just click to see what's the loss. So it's a little bit of loss in the gray, I can tell. But that looks the same. That looks the same. The plan, you can tell a little bit, but you can still read it. So I would say that this would be fine for a digital presentation. If you were printing it, you would want to make sure that you have both versions, like the downside, the original one from JPEGs and the one that's saved as a reduced file size. But I also have the PDF made from the linked PDFs as well. It's just that that's a larger one. Okay. I am down 30 minutes and my 40-minute presentation timer will go off soon. Do y'all have any questions?
Yeah, we're never going to print it, right?
What's that?
Are we ever going to print it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, right now, what's going to happen with this is I would upload this. You know, this is made for sending to people digitally that they would see on the screen. Like if you send your portfolio to somebody, they're not going to print it. They're just going to look at the PDF, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you want to create versions that work for both the screen and printed, and you want to be emailing people and uploading files for the digital presentations or for the email. That's why you need to do 2 InDesign files, one that has the linked, you can see the linked PDF, and then one that has the same images, but all been transformed into and relinked as JPEGs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If let's just say, you know what happens if you try to downsize a file that has linked PDFs?
Yeah.
And so this is the original one this is with PDFs. If I try to if I say file and then reduce file size, it does not properly reduce a file that has a PDF or Illustrator file linked. It only really reduces the images. So I'm reducing the file size. And Mel's was pretty, again, pretty efficient. So it was saved down to 16 megs. So that's not bad. But again, that's just 7 pages. So with the PDF and Illustrator version of the InDesign file, it went from 26 megs to 17.8. With the JPEG version, it goes from 9 megs to 2 megs. Again, and you guys are going to have a harder time because I know the files that y'all have in your presentation are gigantic Illustrator files for all your floor plans, your sections, and I'm just showing a couple. When you guys make your presentation, you're going to find that this file that you when you export from a PDF from InDesign with linked Illustrator files is going to be very large, and so it's really imperative that you duplicate that file, you turn it in, you open it up, and then sorry, I'll go back to this, and you relink, or you edit I'll just relink it, that you relink every Illustrator file with a newly made JPEG file. That way, when you export this as a JPEG, as a PDF, it will be significantly smaller file size and easier to scroll through and send to people later on. And you guys, when people start asking you for a portfolio, you're going to have that problem. I know that grad schools have a requirement a maximum file size. So, and probably when you apply for jobs online, there's a maximum size PDF that you can upload to their site. And so you're going to have to kind of go through your InDesign file and find those heavy Illustrator files and open those in Photoshop to relink. Does that make sense? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions about that?
Can you show how you changed the PDF into a JPEG again?
Okay. So I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to go to this drawing, and I click on the drawing, and I have links over here on the, I have links on the right. So I can, let's say I was here and I saw a PDF. I can click on that and I can I right click on the idea.pdf and I do go to link. So it's going to the link now. Now I can see it, and I'll do edit with, and I'll do Photoshop. So, but to do that, there's multiple ways you can do it, but you can do it over here too. But I right click on this part of the link on the name. And before I relink it, I'm going to edit it with Photoshop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I edit with Photoshop and it's 10 inches wide, I'm going to have that be 300 DPI. Hit OK. And then I do File, Save As. Right now it's a Photoshop file. I want to save it as a JPEG, idea.jpg, and it's going to go in the same folder. Hit Save, Maximum. And I'm going to go ahead and close this Photoshop file. I don't need it. And I go back to my InDesign file. It's still there. It's still linked as PDF. I'll right click on this now and I'll do relink. And I find it right there, idea, PDF, open. And now it's a JPEG.
So by making something a JPEG from PDF, it automatically makes it smaller?
Yeah, it will when you export this as a PDF. Because you guys know when you have an Illustrator file and you turn it into a plot, like your gigantic plots. When you open that PDF, you can see the vectors in the PDF, right? That's not the native file. It's a PDF of the InDesign file, or of the Illustrator or the InDesign file. So you can see how here on the left, the screen mode is on not on high resolution. It's on typical display, but you can tell that that's a PDF because you can't really see the line weights. But now that I've made it as a JPEG, you can read it better even in the file. But so when you export a PDF from InDesign, when I do File, Export, and I save it as a PDF print, it actually takes a while because it's going and finding this location of this PDF, this Illustrator PDF on the left, which is a huge file. And so it's having to kind of take that memory to make the PDF. But if that's a JPEG, it goes by that fast. So then when you open it up, it's going to make, if you're referencing a JPEG, it's just pixels. It's not trying to keep the lines. And so it's going to it's going to go much quicker, and the file size is going to be much smaller. And again, you know, you guys have in your head to present like you must have the line weights be perfect, which is true, but you're not printing it 24 by 36 or 36 by 72 inches. You're just printing it digitally so that you look at it on the screen. And so you don't require the same resolution. And you need both of those things. But for the most part, as you move forward, you're only going to be, even if you print it, it's going to be 8.5 by 11, right? You're not going to be plotting a giant presentation file of your work from school anywhere else, right? It's going to exist as a small little image, right? And so you need those JPEGs so that you can make multiple page PDFs without bogging down the memory that also bogs down someone's inbox when you try to email them. But y'all, sorry, go ahead.
If the original file is bigger than the 20 inches, would you then increase the DPI when you're editing in Photoshop?
You can increase the DPI if you want. It depends on how big the file is. Like if this site plan, if I go to it, I'm gonna do edit with Photoshop. So let me just look at the native size of that Illustrator file. It is 24 inches wide by 84 inches high. I know my screen doesn't need to show that, right? And you can see it's going to be 500 megabytes. So in this case, I'm not going to, if I change the size of the image, I can do that, but I'm going to have to resize it in InDesign at that point. So in this case, I'm gonna make it like 150 DPI at 24 inches wide. That's plenty. And I hit OK. And it takes a while to rasterize these files, but you know, and then I just save as JPEG. So when I go back to my InDesign, I can click on it so it's there, and I do relink. Where did the, I don't know where it went. I didn't see it. It went in the wrong folder. So there. So I relinked it as a JPEG.
Right. So does it make a difference between JPEGs and PNGs if you need a transparent background?
You should try it as a PNG. I think it's still going to be much better than if it's a PDF. But that's a good question.
Is it mandatory to turn it in?
For graduation?
Yeah.
It's not mandatory for graduation, but you know, usually we have about half of the graduating class participate. I hope that, I mean, it's required that you turn in your documentation to your teacher. So you don't have to replot it. It's just as easy to go ahead and do the same presentation and upload that for the graduation pinup.
When is final jury?
The final jury?
Yeah.
Well, Veronica, you're done with studios.
Not final jury, like a senior jury? What is it called?
So-
Super jury.
So we don't have a date yet for the super jury itself. I need to talk with the other teachers to get that set. But it would most likely be just the next week after you turn it in. So I think that you're supposed to turn in your file May 8th for graduation.
Okay.
Did you get that email?
No, I didn't.
Because I also emailed it to you.
I don't think I got that, but
Okay.
I might
Did-
have.
So Train sent it out. She was supposed to send it to all graduating seniors about the due dates, the due date and the timeline for the graduation pinup.
Yeah, for some reason, I just like don't get trained emails anymore. Like even for the career fair and stuff, I wasn't getting all of them, like any of them. So.
Okay. So if any of you haven't gotten that info, I can send it to you. Just go ahead and you can email me and I'll send you the documentation. But the main thing is that you want to upload your final presentation by May 8th at, I think, noon. I'm not sure exactly, but May 8th. And there's a link in the file that I sent so you can upload it to Box. And so every graduating senior will have access to that Box folder. They can just upload their PDF to that. And while people that are in studio right now, it's going to be easier for them because they have to present digitally anyway. So it's not going to be any change. People like Nathan or you, Veronica, you're going to have to, are you baking?
I'm making lasagna.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, ship it to me.
Yeah. You're going to have to rework your presentation. So you're going to have both of those InDesign files open, copy, paste, rethink how you present. And again, how do you layer the idea from the initial statement down to the detail? And how do you, like what I'm showing here, how do you combine site plan, idea diagram, layers of the idea along with the statement, to kind of start off. So you can't have everything on one page. How do you manage the concept over a series of pages so that when they kind of click through the PDF, they feel like they're getting the layers of the idea that build up to the project? Does that make sense? How's it going, Nathan?
It's going.
Okay.
My classes are now online, so
Yes.
I have 5 classes. So
So are there, I know there's graduating people. This is really meant to address different people. Like you could, if you're graduating, then you need to know this for uploading your project to the Box folder. And again, email me if you don't have that information. If you're just presenting for studio, you also need this because you're not presenting a gigantic board, you're presenting multiple pages. You layer that kind of concept. So it's not just, one floor plan. It might be a combination of a floor plan and a perspective, or a section with a perspective. You think about how to combine some layers together into one page. And then over time, you can have text, but you want to make sure that you can read the text that you have. And like just for your portfolio, you want to make sure that that text is actual words, no misspellings. Then this presentation is important because this is a big deal for everyone, even in third year, in how you need to kind of present your work in a way that's efficient. Again, if you are having to scroll through a very heavy, and you're going to find out, you should test it, very memory intensive PDF size, you're going to see that it's really slow and laggy to export, to view, to download, to upload. Everything is going to be a pain. So you want to have those versions of high resolution PDF and also with versions as JPEG so that you can very quickly get that across to your faculty, to people on your review, and also to make that for your portfolio to present, to send to email to people. Any other questions? No?
Someone asked, where will this recording be available?
I don't know. Well, I have the comment from Robert Burrow. Robert's on here. Let me see. Photoshop is for raster images, Illustrator's for vector graphics. Yes, that's absolutely true. Robert, what I'm talking about here is when you make an InDesign file that has these embedded Illustrator files, that the end PDF file will be gigantic, and students are going to find that that PDF file is huge, and that you can rasterize that Illustrator file for the screen view. That doesn't mean you're replacing or you're deleting the Illustrator file. You're still going to have it, but what you present is not the native Illustrator file, but it's going to be a JPEG of that Illustrator file. Just make sure that you have the screen resolution at like 300 dpi. That's going to be higher resolution than anything on anyone's screen. Colette, does it make a better JPEG in Photoshop rather than Illustrator? I don't know. It's probably the same. But what I say is, don't bother making the JPEGs from any Illustrator files until you're done with the presentation that has the Illustrator files on it. That way you're not making Illustrator files for files that you're not using, or you're not changing the size of it for that won't work later, so that you're really focusing on the ones that are made for that presentation. Christians, I think, says that your point is it's the same. You just want to be careful that when you are transforming that image from an Illustrator PDF into a JPEG, and that might not be suitable for a gigantic plot, but it's probably fine even for a print. I know for my portfolio, and I know my portfolio has professional work, in an office, my own professional work, competition entries, and my student work. That PDF is literally 1.2 gigabytes. So I had to open every PDF and change it to a JPEG, and then separate the separate types of work to get it down to a PDF that was manageable with under 20 megabytes each. But I didn't do that until I knew exactly what all the Illustrator files I had and how I was using them and what size they were, before I could kind of reduce it down to something that's okay for my portfolio. And you're going to find that as well. You're going to have a lot of questions, and you're going to be frustrated whenever you make your portfolio and you see that it's 120 megabytes and you have to send someone a link to it, and then you're asking them to download a PDF that's 120 megabytes to see your work. And I don't know, it's not unethical, but it's lazy on your part. And people who architects don't have time for that. So they're gonna skip it. They're gonna delete it. They're not gonna look at it. So you wanna make it as easy as possible for people to read your portfolio. Okay, I will, Dana says to send it to the professors. Yeah, I can see if I can do that. I'll figure out how to get the recording and send it to everybody that maybe missed it. Any other questions? Do we see the other students' work after we turn it in? You will see the other the other student work listed on Box. We're going on the honor code here. And I ask that you guys be decent and don't delete someone else's work, okay?
Oh,
For graduating. Nathan, are you gonna do that?
probably yes.
I'm gonna reach through there and grab your neck and wring it. Okay.
Wear gloves.
I'll wear gloves. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.